Key's own relationship to slavery is really fascinating. And I think, the interesting question that talking about this third verse brings up today is, like, should this still be our anthem if it refers and sort of grows out of a time of this sort of unacceptable treatment of human beings as things, this kind of absolutely heinous and despicable treatment
Right.
of African Americans.
Actually,
Yep.
in the recent publicity about Anthem protests and such, one writer called it a diss track to black people who had the audacity to fight for their freedom. A lot of other articles appeared online, sort of questioning Francis Scott Key's relationship to abolition, his experience as a slave owner, and so let's look at that a little bit. I mean, it feels
Yeah,
like a legitimate question. Is
absolutely.
this does this taint the song? The fact that all of these that this slave verse is involved, and he's actually from the point of view of a freed slave, maybe actually that would be a rational choice.
No, it's definitely a rational choice to join the Colonial Marines. And so it does taint the song, I think. It's there's a couple things about it that I think are worth taking into consideration. One is that African Americans fought on both sides of the war. So there were African Americans who defended Baltimore, who were among the professional soldiers in the U.S. Army in Fort McHenry, including one of those dozen people who died was an African American man. There were African Americans in the flotilla that defended the fort against a sort of a midnight secret boat attack on barges. A guy named Charles Ball, who was really heroic in defending the fort. So in my mind, the reference to hirelings and slaves, so the British mercenaries and probably the Colonial Marines that's in the language, is a way of sort of saying the enemy. And there were blacks and whites on both sides, both Francis Scott Key's side that he was fighting alongside, and then also on the British side. So I think it's more about vilifying the enemy than it is about singling out African Americans for derision. So I don't think the song is inherently racist in that regard, because it's also praising the blacks that were defending and fighting on the American side. Francis Scott Key was definitely an anti-abolitionist. He was not pro-slavery. So this is the tricky thing about Key. He freed all of his slaves during his lifetime. He, as a lawyer, worked gratis to defend black Americans from illegal impressment as slaves. He worked for free to free the children of slaves from slavery. So his own views are really complicated. What he wanted was sort of the gradual and, I would say, controlled end of slavery, so that slavery would fall apart over time in a way that would release blacks to an economic world where they could support themselves because they could get education and be trained, and then also not disrupt the white economic order. And that's his fatal moral compromise, is that he wasn't willing to disrupt the economic order in order to right this moral wrong.